Welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I'm a financial mediator and business valuation expert in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we're speaking with Rick Watson. He's located in California. He's an author and a founding partner of the National Referral Network. He also helps professionals around the country strengthen and grow their businesses by helping them run better, maximize their exits, and basically grow into the process. Welcome, Rick. How are you?
Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Melissa.
Well, and Rick, you could tell us a little bit about your book as well, because we're going to be leading into and today speaking about the impact of the right clients on your business and maybe on your business value. And the importance for this is really because, there's implications to value. But I think in this situation, we're really saying, okay, in the new world, right? And we're online right now. In the new world, how are we going to get our best right clients? How are we going to identify it? And how are we getting into that space of understanding where we should be? So maybe you should start it off with just telling us a little bit about your book and kind of how you really got interested in looking at the people side and the client side and the makeup side of the business world.
So thanks. So it's a firm worth building. And it's a book that was written because accountants, attorneys, and a lot of different business people. And I was surprised at how poorly most of them were run. It particularly is a problem when you have somebody with an expertise. Valuation would be an example of sometimes we deal with valuation folks who are great at their job and they don't want to spend any energy running the business properly. They sort of continually push back to this, I'm an expert, and doing anything other than what I'm an expert in is a waste of my time. And so that's where we got to write the book. And so we came up with somewhere in the neighborhood of 29 different lessons in there. So to address this part about identifying the right client, I think the first thing is to identify who your business is. That's your value proposition, right? Because I think so many folks just kind of gloss right by that. Well, I'm an attorney and I do attorney stuff. Well, no, what's your value proposition? What makes you different than everybody else? And the reason that's important is because that starts to help you set up something called an ideal client. So you can have more than one ideal client, but you write out what that is. I mean, it's take your best people, the folks you most enjoy, the people who energize you, and the most profitable. And then what do they have in common? And what groups do they sort of fit in? And that starts to become an ideal client.
Well, and I think that, we work with a lot of businesses as well. And part of it is the process of redefining yourself sometimes, and so when you're looking at clients, are you telling them to kind of reevaluate where they are, who their client profiles are, like what they're really interested in? Are you telling them like, we kind of have a 6-month process? So like every 6 months, we kind of like, are we still looking at the same thing? But like for a big company, right? What are you recommending? Is this just the yearly kind of take a look, or is this a little bit different process?
Again, you could have more than one ideal client. You might have I think it ultimately starts with your sales team, right? Because some of your people are going to be really good at this, and some of your people are going to be really good at something else. And they can't be good at everybody. So some people are going to be really good dealing with engineers. Some people are going to be really good at dealing with, attorneys, for example, because they're very different psychologically. And again, to your point, you start with the business itself has to know who it is, because it's who are we even trying to attract? And as much as I could talk about the right clients, if you can't define that, maybe you would define what the wrong clients are, because you could certainly say, well, okay, I can't do that anymore. I can't see those kinds of people. That's just, I struggle in that environment. So, and maybe the opposite of that is what your ideal client is. You just lean into the other side. So I hope that answers that.
Well, yeah, and I think that, it does get into it a little bit of, as we've talked about this topic, and, in some capacities, I'm looking at business valuations and cash flow, but we're looking also at the client makeup, right? Like, what makes up your clients, not only the longevity of clients, but in general, if you're just going out and accepting anybody who comes to the door, right? And you're just saying, yep, what do you need? Great, I'll do it. Like, how are you seeing the client mix or the client makeup really affect business value and in general cash flow, right? Because it's not just, oh, who comes through the door. Sometimes we tell people, like, where do you have the most fun? Where do you have the most love? Like, what makes the most money is one factor, but it's not always the whole factor.
Yeah. I think it's the biggest mistake that a young business makes, right? They take everybody. Thinking of like an investment fund, if you think of it that way, because if you're selling your company someday, in a sense, it's like an investment fund. Well, if you had a real estate fund and it was made up of everything, an apartment complex and a hotel it's really hard to sell that because yes, it's cash flow, but it's lots of different kinds of cash flow that's so confusing. Whereas if I'm going to buy a real estate fund, and I'm using a business analogy here, I might want to buy an apartment fund. It's just apartments. I know what I'm getting, and I can scale that into my thing. And it was surprising to me when I saw a real estate fund that had tried to do two different things, and it really hurt their value. And I think that's true, just to draw that analogy across. If you take everybody, then you have nothing that you're selling that's unique. It's just bodies. And that means that your valuation is going to be built on pure cash flow. But if you built it on something specific, like I deal specifically with attorneys or I deal specifically with whatever, then a firm is going to pay more for that because they want that specific thing.
Yeah.
So you think it affects valuation? It also affects sustainability, because if you're trying to be everything to all sorts of different archetypes, it's drive you nuts. You can't scale that business. Whereas if you can repeat that process over and over again, it helps you to scale, and that also affects your valuation as well.
Well, and a lot of times, valuators are looking at the cash flow. So let's say you have two products and one makes you a positive, return and one makes a negative return. And they end up balancing each other out. You'd think that the company can barely break even, yet you have some things that are doing amazing business and others that are doing not very much business, and there's no correlation. And so a lot of times I don't think people understand that there could even be a wrong client, like, and you're saying wrong clients could even harm your business. And I'm saying, in some context, when we're in this hustle culture, we're in this, like, how can I get my next business, my next client? Where are you at? Oh, okay, Rick, what do you got for me? Do you have another client for me? Like, I think that I have some ideas of how a wrong client could harm you, but what are you really like, what is your definition of a wrong client to really reset the stage of, we're not saying, oh, you should have gone with Sally and it was Susie. It was like, these are the client makeup. Like, what do you think are some red flags and that would create kind of a wrong client situation?
So I always call it good growth versus bad growth. Okay. So good growth. So you set goals, you set a value proposition, you set goals for your company of who you want to be. And it's not just cash flow, it's a number of clients and the kind of clients and where you're going because you have an ideal client. And good growth takes you in the direction of that. So if you have a minimum, for example, a minimum might be taking you in the direction of something. Good growth is scalable indefinitely. Bad growth is actually slowing down, or it's creating glue in your whole thing. It's just making the whole thing just not run as smoothly. And the reason is because you're trying to be everything to everybody. The best example of this, we looked at a firm, we hire financial advisors, and we were looking at a firm that had $100 million in assets. We were like, well, that's a pretty nice little firm between 3 partners. But in looking at them, they were working 7 days a week, 12-hour days. And my response to them was, here, we love you guys. We think you're awesome because you've developed all these great skills. But the problem is, we think you need to get rid of somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60% of your clients. That's the solution. And they were like, ugh. Well, they spent the energy to build all these people. Now they don't want to let go of them. And it was because it was all bad growth. We had to cut away all that bad growth. And I think that's where the conversation stopped. I think for us, at least with them, it becomes addictive to pick up these people that you shouldn't be picking up, right? And it's like you're hooked on heroin, but you can't get off of it, but you know you need to get off of it. Well, that's what, if you look at the person and you're like, are you taking me in the direction I want to go? And the answer is clearly no. Then what I always think of is make them pro bono. Now, how do you feel about it? Are you still want to work with that little old lady? That's great, because you're doing it to help them. But if you make everybody that's taking you in the wrong direction pro bono, it forces you to start deciding this is the right, you'll get a lot better at it really quick.
I cannot imagine clients are very happy when you say that.
Well,
And
if they're pro bono, you're not charging them. They love that.
no, I'm saying if you're the business, to come in, most people are saying, oh, cut your expenses and, look at new markets. But to come in and cut the client, like, can you give me an example of what that looks like? And I mean, I'd take any industry really, because like, I'll give you an example. I think a wrong client in litigation, right, is one that is going to take twice as much work, and where I could get the same amount of money for a fixed fee that's simple, that has, a 4-week time frame and no stress, and everybody, if it's the same dollars, am I in more stress or am I in less stress? So that could be, for me, a deciding factor. But for you, like, what, I think it's fascinating. I think that's the hardest conversation to have with an owner, that their client mix is a problem. And so I think it's a delightful kind of diversion. I didn't want to stay on this topic so much, but I think it's really kind of interesting. Like, do you have an example of an industry where you come in and maybe give us an idea of what some not great clients are for growth?
So again, part of it has to do with you, right? So if you love those technical conversations, then in my business, in a financial advisory business, I can have engineers, and I can have I don't know, someone who's super relationship oriented. Well, who am I? Because I might really love those detailed conversations and I kind of get off on it. On the other hand, if I'm not, that's the wrong client. Okay, it shouldn't be in my mix. So that's one reason. Another thing that you said is we do not put up with abuse. Okay, I mean, that's a wrong client. Okay, I'm sorry, but that's unacceptable. We just don't, right? Because what it does, it wears out the tools that our staff are our tools, and we will not put up with someone who wears out our tools because it's just too expensive. How you have that conversation, that's another thing, right? That's a tough conversation to have, but I think honesty is frankly the best policy. You start out and you say, look, this is unacceptable, right? And I always tell clients, as much as clients think that they choose us, we're choosing them. And there's a compliment built into that somewhere, right? That we want you. But if there came a point where they're not efficient, then either I'm going to find somebody who is a good fit for them. Look, I don't work with engineers well. Maybe this person works with engineers and they are just so awesome about it. I think it'd be a disservice if I was the main person you dealt with. I'll still check on you, but we're going to have Bob work with you on this.
Mm.
That'd be a way. I don't want to give away somebody who's abusive. Bob loves to work with abusive people. I can't do that. I'll just say, I'm sorry, but you need to go find another firm that will better work with you.
Sure. Well, and I think that, as you're looking at, okay, what are my current client mix? It really comes down to the product or service that you also may be providing at the time. So are you normally seeing this, process of maybe reviewing your clients? Because like in my situation, some of my clients are my referral sources. So they would be like continued, providing clients. And I think, we talked about this at the very beginning. I think that most people are not ready for abundance. Like nobody trains you of like when people are pounding down the door, how do you handle that? How do you handle now? Because now you're talking to 5 different clients and you're like, one of them's great. There's 2 that are decent, and then there's 3 that I might want to figure out somebody else that would be a better fit. But I don't, and quite frankly, some people are like good with boundaries, right? They can say no all the time. Other people are in this gray area. They're like, I don't want to say no. And nobody says no. So why would you tell me to say no? I would just say, like, how could we figure, so at what point are you telling, because there's a confidence that has to be around that. But at what point are you turning them away? Because it makes me cringe a little bit talking about this. Like, are you really turning them away? Are you saying no? Like, what do you say?
So a piece of advice that I got early in my career from a mentor of mine said, and I try to keep this in mind all the time. It's the most important thought. You'll make more money saying no than saying yes.
Okay.
No more money saying no than, so I just don't think this is a good fit. Right. Yeah. I mean, I want this to be a good fit for both you and for me. I just don't think this is a good fit. And I think maybe, and then I just try to help them. Let me see if I can get you pointed in the right direction here. So it's funny because we do not routinely go through and review clients. And I have advisors of mine that I'm constantly on about, hey, we need to bring your minimums up. So you need to say goodbye to some of these people. And it's tough for them. I get it. So the solutions are to find a more automated way of dealing with it. First of all, I'm not going to give away my garbage. So if they're really not great people, they're mean, whatever, they suck up time. One thing you can do, by the way, if they suck up time, is you can start to charge more. To your point, you can say, look, we're happy to do these services for you, but we need to also attach an hourly fee for this extra work because it ends up, we have to get that done. So we do that when we retitle accounts. Sometimes people bring us big boxes of stuff that we're going to have to weed through, and it's 14 hours worth of work. I go, obviously, I can't give away 14 hours worth of work, right? And they're like, oh, no, of course not. Great. So we're going to come up with a price, and so-and-so is going to do that for you. Mm-hmm. But I won't give away garbage. So if it's garbage, then I say we just don't have a good fit. Mm-hmm. If it's somebody that's just not a good fit, then I'll say, look, I'll tell them right in the beginning, I think the best thing I can do is get you in the right place. And so phrase that we use a lot is being humble and saying, look, I'm really good at what I do, but I'm not great at everything. Mm-hmm. What I am really awesome at is surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me. Oh, you've just pushed yourself down, pushed everybody else up. That's important because now I can make a referral. And the best person at valuation that I know is Melissa, right? I could tell you what I think, but it's not near as, she just knows so much more than me. Well, then they're happy to go to that other place, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think edifying the people around you is one of the ways of making it so that you can pass somebody from one person to another fairly easily.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think we look at other people in our space as competition or we have a harder time making those connections to hand off a client, right? And I also think there's less people in some regards, less people that I know that have that, like, okay, so I have 2 or 3 people that I always give my tax work to, right?
Sure.
And, like, how do I start having those conversations when they say, oh, okay, those people are also busy? Or, how do I have those conversations? Because then they're like, well, how do we, do we get a referral? Then you're calling these people and saying, oh, are we working at a referral fee? Are we working out a deal or something? And that to me doesn't, like, I just usually will give clients and say, here, call so-and-so and reach out to them. But is there a better way to be, and I've gone through, giving 3 people, giving 2 people. I mean, it really depends on the situation. But when I have really desperate people trying to get divorced and they need a contact, like, giving them 3 doesn't really help them. And if they're not a right fit for me and I'm on the phone, like, is just saying it's not a right fit and then maybe handing them off to somebody, or because I don't even want to coordinate that call. Do you know what I'm saying?
So good. So everybody is a referral source. So first, let's go backwards here.
Yeah.
So you said, how do I do, because there was a bunch of questions embedded in there. So what I would say is this. First, you should always be building your network. Okay. If you only have 1 or 2 or 3 people, I think look, refer people that you can send folks to is like a superpower, and you want that to be as strong as possible. So, because I can help, I can reach out and touch somebody in all sorts of different places and ways because of that. So I want to constantly be developing those relationships, and I don't want to be doing it mixers. I'll call them and say, hey, we have a joint client, and I just wanted to reach out and introduce myself to you, and have a little conversation, and maybe whatever, however that leads. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now the second part of that was, you'll have to help me with this a little bit, because then we went into another area.
Well, part of it is that, like, maybe I only keep up with those top 3. Like, I think you're getting to a deeper issue, which is we are not getting to know our referral sources. And so we're just tossing out these names. But where you're going is like, and then sometimes I feel so uncomfortable with those referral sources. I'm like, I don't know anybody. And I do, but maybe I don't know if they're the good. So I think it's all of those discussions in there of are we building the referral network? And no, I don't think we've had to put time in it in the past. And I think we're having to put more time in it now. And I'm at a loss because it's a lot of work, right?
I mean, it's not a huge amount of work. I think in our firm, the National Referral Network, a lot of times we'll end up making those calls for somebody. So all we want to do is we're trying to help build that network. So that's one way of doing is find somebody to make the calls for you. But I do think it doesn't take that much time just to reach out to somebody and introduce yourself. And if you had somebody to pass them on to after that, either if it was a staff person or you used the National Referral Network, somebody else to do the rest of the vetting and chasing them down, I think. But the thing is, I don't like the idea of 3 referrals. 3 referrals, you've just commoditized everybody in that thing. So I don't want to do this kind of work, or we don't do this part of work. I'm going to send you over to Bob and 6 of his friends. I think is not, again, I'd rather say is, all right, I have a special friend, Bob. He will freaking take care of you. He's awesome. Build him up, right? Now, Bob better be on the same page with you and say really nice things about you when the person comes in. They better say, oh, Melissa's just, every time she gives me these referrals of people that I just think are amazing. Every one of them, she must have some great vetting process. What he just did is compliment the person who came in the door, right? But he also complimented you. So, So what we teach at the National Referral Network is this idea of of edifying each other. And we build a little sandbox for everybody to play nice within. Because you're right, in the industry, what happens in business, they see each other. Referrals are often a form of competition, and they're trying to compete for the client's attention and loyalty. And so it's really hard to build somebody else, and you're exposing your neck a little bit. And I would say that just like love, it's sort of necessary as part of the equation, right? If you want to, that's part of it, is you're going to have to, but you won't keep exposing yourself to somebody, if they don't reciprocate, which is why the first question we ask when we get a referral from somebody is, hey, what did they say about me? I love that question. Well, tell me about, and they go, well, they said you're nice. No, tell me, what did they tell me? Tell me about them. Because what you're looking for, you're fishing for is, do they commoditize you, right? Oh yeah, well, she gave me the name of 3 other valuation experts and Melissa. Oh, great. That would suck, right? Great. So,
And I feel like their next question is, well, who else was on the short list?
yeah,
You know,
think
like
that's
I don't
fair.
even know if it helps. It like almost makes them like, oh, you're lumping me in with these other 2. And I'm like, oh gosh, there's no win, right?
Well, what happens is you're going to call the person afterwards and you're going to
Mhm.
say, all right, little coaching opportunity, right? And let's talk about this. Um, but you're not going to embarrass them in front of the client. Well, that's sweet of them. And I love that they go the extra mile and give all those extra names. And, I think,
Mm.
so I think it's staying humble there is really helpful.
Mhm.
But
Well, and I think that this is an interesting because a lot of our listeners are in the valuation community or professional services or attorneys. And as an expert witness in certain jurisdictions, when you're going into certain courtrooms, your reputation matters and who you're affiliated with matters. And I think, are we entering a time where your client values should match your company values, or are we just going towards that in some capacity? Because I think that is a little bit, if I have 2 clients that same time, same money, same everything, and one is more aligned with how we do business or has less conflicts, I don't know, on across the board, I think it's a better fit. But does that matter right now? Like, do you need the values to compare, or is that just a better fit as a client too?
I think, okay, so let's back up a little bit on this. I think the client values, like, do we have to have the same political values? No, right? I don't think so. I think my job is to represent them, not my own, right? Now I'm imposing my values on them. I'm not going to do that. So I do think though that, yeah, so I don't really care what their recycling policy is and whatever, all that's separate, right? They can do them. I do think it's interesting because COVID kind of really stressed that, was this idea of you do you and I'll do me, right?
Right.
So, but I do think that it is helpful when they appreciate your values. And what I mean by that is your values of, we always get back to somebody within 24 hours. Well, if I've got somebody who sees me as a means to an end and they're very transactional, I don't think that relationship works well. So that kind of comes back to the company's values. Is we're trying to make these values the really important ones, the ones that your company talks about a lot, the commitments that you make. And again, as I said to you in the very beginning, the reason having a solid value proposition matters, laying it all out. What do I believe in? Who do we? Because if they don't respond to that, then that's a bad client, to your point that you'd made again. Um, they should say, I'm so happy I'm here. I've talked to 12 people and no one has said what you feel, right?
Mhm.
All the time. That's what you want them to be. We sell our services to some extent like religion, that there should be a visceral, like, I'm with my tribe, I'm with my family. And if it's not, for me, that's just not a good fit. That's where we start thinking, are they going to come around or are they not going to come around?
Interesting. Well, and I think that, it's a little bit different take. It's more so, are you guys like in the same river floating the same way, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you have to have everything in line, but as we start maybe a more authentic type of capitalism, we're going to start seeing that people would tend to work with clients that are also doing business at the level that they're doing, timely fashion or responsive or considerate or things like that, that those will be deal breakers if the price is the same. Now, what about situations where you have clients that, maybe you're a more of a, like, we have clients that could come in and want something done really quick, right? And maybe we have a constant pipeline. What happens to that type of situation? Are those, is that come down to, can your system handle it? Do you have a process for that? Like, do you get into really working with companies on their process or their client acquisition, things and like that?
Deal a lot with that. I think our approach is basically automate everything so that you can humanize the exceptions. And I that means that has everything to do with scale. Can I scale this idea? So one of the things that generated the book was I would talk to accountants who said I had to fire a third of my clients because I can't deal with everybody every year. I'm like, well, no, that's wrong, right? You don't just get rid of clients. They're so expensive to get in the first place. What you do is you develop systems to handle those people better and to spread that value. Well, then I'll just have to hire another accountant. I'm like, all right, yes, you have to hire another accountant, but then that person will do it their way. No, they're going to do it your way because you're going to scale your ideas out, your values, everything, right? It's going to continue to scale out. But that's not the way a lot of advice giving professionals like accountants deal with it. They just limit growth to deal with the problem that they didn't handle in the first place.
Yeah, and I think it's sometimes, harder to figure out where to pivot if you have groups of people that are answering the calls and starting the client relationship, and then you have other people that are kind of managing the process. But what happens in those relationships with clients where they may not seem like the right fit now? So we're changing, you guys have been around for a while, they may not seem like the right fit now. I think your advice was really good, in talking about the pro bono, but also, is there a way to, like, for example, we have a certain type of fraud product that we have somebody else can do it more efficient, better than us. And really, we encourage people to go to them first as the go-to, right? Which everybody tells us is a bad idea, to just send the client off to them first before they come to it. And I agree, that might be a crazy idea, but they're so good at it that it is the most efficient first step of the process, even if it's not with us. And so, what other suggestions do you have? And yeah, with that kind of situation, I could partner with them. Like, I could work out a referral. But in this case, we've just said, well, if they really should go to you first, and then that they should come to me second, like, should we just tell people that's the process? And when they come,
I
right?
agree with that. I think that whoever told you that's not good. So it's back to what you'd said earlier about abundance versus scarcity, right? If you've only got one client in the world left, then sending them off to another company is stupid. On the other hand, if there's an abundance, if you have thousands and thousands of people who want to talk to you, and the most efficient way is to send them off. So if you start approaching life from an abundance perspective, it tends to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that again, to manage these relationships with clients who are not initially the right fit, I think we talked a little bit about that idea that you have what its an ideal profile is. They don't match the ideal profile. If it's 3 of the items they don't match, that maybe it's not a big deal. But if it's most of them, that's a problem. and I really think you reach out to them and say, look, I'm committed to making sure that everybody that I touch gets taken care of the best way possible. And I think that we're frankly not the right fit, or I might have a partner who's a way better fit for you. And I think they're going to be thankful. I think at the end of the day, you want them to be like, wow, that was kind of cool, because they're still a referral source, right? They're still connected to somebody who made the referral. And at the end of the day, I want to make sure that Bob, who made the referral, is happy with what we did with you. And so can you please just let them know that I told you the best thing to do is this. I'm going to redirect this flow. You do that with clients anyway. You correct your clients all the time where you're like, hey, this isn't a good, you're not going down the right path. I need you to push over here. It's the same thing. It's just who's dealing with a relationship. Yeah. And if they're really bad, you might want to send them to your competition. That would be how you would submarine your competition.
Yeah, and I think we usually know, we're like, oh gosh, so and so sent that to me. I don't know if that's going to be a good one, or it's a complicated one. It's always good. Okay, I got one more question for you, and then I want to talk more about your the group that you run. And one of the things that I think you might be able to give us some perspective as we talk about how to do it better, how to network better in the future, because I'm in this same position where I think that networking of the past is dead. And I don't exactly know how to do the future, because it seems like I actually have to have a relationship with people, not just, log contacts into my LinkedIn. And now I have so many contacts that I don't know. Right. But what else, when you're looking at, because you deal with a lot of professional services firms, a lot of financial firms, and what do you think? And a lot of our listeners are service firms, right? Professional firms. And we have some unique differences when you don't have like a product attached all the time. A lot of us do, but still, what is the largest issue you see right now with professional firms of getting clients, or, managing this process in general?
I would say they commoditize themselves. Firms commoditize themselves. What are you? I'm an accountant. If that's your answer, that's a problem. Okay. Because there's nothing unique there. So I love, this idea. I think we was talking with your pre-show about this, about taking care of folks who'd gone through a divorce, and we specialize in people with, people who are dealing with the valuations in divorce. I think that's unique. Oh, okay. I know where you fit in the world now, right? It's more of the story. So I think that largest problem is that you commoditize yourself. And then when you try to network, you're like, hey, you should use me. I'm an accountant. That's the story, right? You haven't given them anything. So now they just put you into the bag full of accountants, right? In their heads, versus a story that makes sense. And that's one thing. I think the other thing is you just run it locally. You see, I just deal in, my little town in Missouri. And I'm like, well, maybe there's a bigger world out there that might need that. And so we'll grow that. And when we built the National Referral Network, it was to take those local networks and expand them on a national scale. Okay. So essentially what would happen is we just click together networks. You have your network of people. We click that into a setting where our people go and talk to them and develop, find out, make sure they're going to play nice in the sandbox, and then make them, and then we get their network, because they have a network as well. So it's not just your network, it's their network that's attached to it. And all of a sudden these networks start to overlay each other. We call it a 3D spider web. And we do a vetting process to make sure that the quality is there. And if somebody's not good, we kick them out. It's that simple, right? Well, usually what we do is we coach them first, then we kick them out. So,
well, and we'll clarify, because this is called the National Referral Network, and it is unique and it is different, and it is maybe a more formalized way of doing this networking. Because I gave you an example of, like, now that the internet, post pandemic, we're in this Zoom era, we all can have clients around the country, around the world. And now when those clients come, they're like, oh, do you have an attorney in Massachusetts? And then I also need a real estate appraiser. Now, an attorney and a real estate appraiser are very state specific. So you actually need them in that state, right? For certain things. Let's just say for certain things. And so I'm like, oh man, okay, who do I know? Let's go to LinkedIn. Let's figure out, okay, first line of, and I'm still spending this. And then I kind of get somebody that's maybe once removed. And yeah, I know, like I sent to somebody that I knew and I was like, hey, do you know somebody in this town? They're like, nope, not in that town. And I was like, but I could take the whole state. I mean, like, what do you know in the state? And so I'm like trying to pull teeth in some capacity. So how would that be different if, like, is National Referral Network like, all the rest, or what are we talking about here?
So I think, first of all, to go backwards a little bit to that earlier question, the other thing that people don't do is they make themselves one thing as opposed to a problem solver. And I don't know that I said that, because ultimately this National Referral Network is to present yourself as a problem solver. More often than not, clients don't ask, do you have an accountant in this town? Okay. What they do say is there's a problem. And you're like, you know what? I see one of the things we need to do here is to get you set up with an accountant that's local, for example, or that knows this specialty, or I'm picking on accountants right now. It could be attorney. It could be anything, right?
Sure.
So a valuation person like someone who deals with folks in valuations and divorce, right? I need somebody who fits that area. So I know somebody, and when you do, that's social capital, the ability for you to point someone in the right direction of a right restaurant or the right movie. So you're just doing it on a scale. Did somebody come to me and say, what's the best movie I should be seeing? No. But we're talking and I'm like, oh, you got to see this. It's so good, right? And then, and I think it would really fit with who you are and your values or whatever. So the National Referral Network is just that concept where it's run in a little ecosystem that we can control the quality of. And it makes it easier for that network to build, because someone just gives us the name of their network people, and then we'll call them and talk to them about, hey, Melissa works in this network. If you'd like to work in this network, we'd love to have you. And here's how it works, right? So you don't have to explain it. Yeah, I mean, we all benefit.
Part of your process is really vetting people. And so it's like, you and I meet and I'm like, man, Rick really knows what he's talking about. And if you were in the National Referral Network, they would be like, well, if Rick's amazing, he probably knows other people that are amazing. And how can we get connected to it? Because quite frankly, sometimes really amazing people, they don't have to put themselves out there because there's a lot of business coming, right? And so it's sometimes harder, but it's taking some of the guesswork out as well, right?
I'll say, though, that when we vet people, one of the things that we're looking for is somebody who's hungry. I think sometimes if they're too busy, they're too good in a sense. They're so busy that their quality starts to fall off because they're controlling their flow based on just reducing quality. So we've had way better luck with somebody who's sort of more mid-level and is trying to grow, and they are very interested in returning that phone call on time. Because at the end of the day, Melissa, you want to look good to the person that you made the referral to. So if you pass them off and they don't call them back for 3 days, that doesn't make you look good, which degraded your relationship. So I think we've had better luck with people who are just very hungry, but also good at what they do.
Well, and as we talk about some ways to reach out to you as well, and ways to work with you, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your past and, eventually also other recommendations of how we grow our business, as some kind of tips at the end. But, tell them a little bit about your story and what your expertise is, as well as, how people could work with you.
Started in the insurance business many years ago, many years ago. And it was just a tough thing. I was getting, but it was kind of interesting to learn about business. And I learned a lot of things about what not to do. As it grew, we grew that into a registered investment advisor. That firm went through a couple of incarnations. Today, it manages a bit over $500 million. And we work with a lot of professionals, financial advisors, accountants, attorneys, insurance advisors, and so on. So we make a lot of these referrers. In fact, right now, the National Referral Network, the largest single referrer in the network is my firm, Protection Point Advisors. By far, we just, we send out a lot of referrals out. And then because of that, we kept running into lessons that needed to be done better. I wish you did. So we just wrote a book called A Firm Worth Building. And it was outlining just basics of how to run a business. Because I think that so many people have not a clue, particularly advice-giving professionals who spend almost no energy running the business. So we became students of the business, my partners and I, and we do a lot of coaching. And then we built the National Referral Network because our firm, one of our firm's mantras is we build what should exist. So National Referral Network didn't exist, so we built it because, and it's been a great solution to getting folks connected and all talking to each other and raising the quality level of professional services out there in general.
Do you think the network helps? Because I think one of the things that people have issues with in marketing or networking is consistency. And we're kind of like, oh, I'll market and network because I got some time, and then I'm busy and I don't do anything. Is it a little bit more consistency? Is it just being able to connect with other people around the country? Because like I said, I don't know anybody in some of these states. So I'm really having to take a recommendation if I don't have somebody in that area. And I need to know that I'm not like handing them off to somebody that's not great.
I mean, again, part of is the network's reputation is at stake. So we do a certain amount of vetting there. I think the other thing is that if you told them, hey, I need a tax attorney in North Carolina, and we didn't have somebody there, we have an automated system that will start to generate that. So it's a really cool automation that runs in LinkedIn and pings and has all these conversations that goes back and forth before a human even gets involved, which is a pretty trippy little thing. Part of that's written in the book. So we do that. We can also reach out to other members because if they start saying, hey, I need somebody here, because they love that, right? So they're getting pinged. So I think that is, and then we have the ability to automate a lot of this. So if it's just one of the other services that we offer, if you needed a mastermind group so that you can get together with other professionals and sort of get a feeling, there's a group, entrepreneurs organization, which you have to do over $1 million of revenue to be part of. This, we don't have that restriction in the mastermind groups, but they're very similar setup behind them. We also do automated marketing. That's a new program that's starting to come out where we'll do the automated LinkedIn text messages, all that stuff. So yes, that exists as well.
Okay, so if we're gonna call you an expert at networking, what are you going to tell me would be the 2 things that I should be definitely doing right now to up my game?
2 things that you should. Well, it's so hard because I don't know you well enough to say, but because
I'm
think
kind of middle of my career, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of know stuff, but I probably could still learn stuff.
Okay, so 2 things: be a problem solver first, not whatever your discipline is. Okay, so that would be first thing. And and make yourself referable. So much of what people do is I want to get referrals, but then I go look at their website and I'm like, oh God, that's embarrassing. But it's part of the reason we have little websites as part of National Referral Network, because I didn't trust people to actually do their websites. Some of them are great, some of them aren't. So they have something. I think if you have a bad reputation, I don't think you do, by the way, but if they haven't fixed that basics of like, I have attorneys and I'll say, hey, I looked at your website and it has a 14-page white paper on some topic. No, that's not helpful. That's just basic 101 marketing, right? Don't make yourself hard to refer. Your website picture makes you look like you're a prison guard, right? I mean, whatever. There's like so many things I could go into about how poorly run some of the businesses are. And I think you have to step back and say, if I'm a customer looking at my site and my brochures and am I referable? Do people go, oh, that's awesome? But if you got a LinkedIn site that shows you drunk at a party the other night, that's a problem. And I know it sounds so stupid. Melissa's going, yeah, okay, these are basics. I would say that 90% of life is not screwing up the basics.
Yeah.
So that'd be the basics. Be referable, be a problem solver. If you're a problem solver and referable, your business will grow. Oh, and maybe a third one would be mindful of being scalable. So many businesses are built with a lack of scale built into them. If you are the center point of everything that happens in your company, you're never going to be able to grow past the number of people that you can handle, right? So it's in my firm, 90 to 95% of every conversation is not with me, right? Why? So that I can be scalable. So I bring other people into that equation purposely so that dilutes me. That's the whole point.
Yeah, and I think that it's very interesting from the business valuation standpoint, and even from our own personal standpoint. We've spent a lot of time this year building out websites better, having them be more usable and downloadable and easier, because I think what you're saying is right. If you're out there spreading the good word about what you do, and then they come to engage you and they're like, like, and even, or you have a picture and when people show up, they walk past you because you don't look like, like all of those things, I don't think people want to waste time on. I don't think they want to put, so it's nice to hear you say, like, those are very important things. Those are kind of like the bow on the package, like they determine, are you like somebody who throws something in a bag? Are you going to wrap it up with, and some people might want each of those, right? We're not saying right or wrong. We're saying if you've accurately defined yourself as who that is, you then will attract those same people. So I think that's amazing. Information. So we've given you a lot of information about how to contact Rick and download his book. And we'll have more information in the podcast notes and direct link to get the book and all of those things. But we appreciate you here, Rick, and look forward to maybe talking to you again about referral networking.